My younger brother Derek used my card while I was unconscious on a hospital table and spent $8,500 on himself. My mother said he was just a kid who made a mistake. The card he maxed out wasn't mine. It was the one tied to a trust worth $175,000, and every cent of that was his. The appendectomy was supposed to be routine. A small incision, a few hours under general anesthesia, home by evening. I'd arranged everything the responsible way I arrange everything. A neighbor with a spare key to check on my cat, my out-of-office message set, my phone on Do Not Disturb until I was in recovery. I am 32 years old. I have been the responsible one since I was 12. By now, it is less a personality trait and more a chronic condition. I came out of anesthesia slowly, like surfacing through thick water. The recovery room smelled of antiseptic and something faintly floral from the nurse's lotion. My mouth was bone dry. My abdomen ached dully under the gauze, and somewhere in the fog, I registered the insistent vibration of my phone on the side table. I assumed it was my coworker checking in. I ignored it. Then it kept going, and going. With fingers that still felt like they belonged to someone else, I unlocked the screen. Alert. Your debit card ending in 4,471 has been charged $2,199 at Novatech Electronics. Alert. Your debit card ending in 4,471 has been charged $1,450 at Seoul District. Alert. Your debit card ending in 4,471 has been charged $890 at Apex Gear Co. Alert. Your debit card ending in 4,471 has been. I stopped reading and opened the banking app. My hands had stopped trembling. They had gone completely still, the way hands go still when the brain shifts from panic into something colder and more focused. The balance on that account, which had stood at just over $175,000 that morning, now read $166,440 and falling. I knew the account number ending in 4,471 the way I know my own address. It was not my personal debit card. My personal card ended in 7,823 and was exactly where I'd put it before checking in first slot of my wallet, zipped into my tote. The card ending in 4,471 was the one linked to the Harold G. Legacy Trust. The one I kept in the hidden inner pocket of that same wallet, behind a false flap that required you to know it existed to find it. The one that existed for a single narrow purpose and had been used exactly once in 3 years, to pay a verified community college enrollment fee. Someone had gone through my wallet very carefully. And that someone had known what to look for. My mother called 2 minutes later. "Honey, how are you feeling?" Her voice had that particular breezy quality she deployed like a weather system moving in warm, high pressure, designed to make you feel that nothing serious was happening. "Derek stopped by to check on your car, make sure everything was locked up. Wasn't that sweet?" I stared at the ceiling of the recovery room. One of the ceiling tiles had a water stain shaped vaguely like the state of Florida. "Mom," I said. My voice came out quieter than I intended. Someone used a card from my wallet. Almost $9,000. A brief static silence. "Oh, goodness. Are you sure you didn't authorize something before your surgery? You know how you are when you're stressed. Sometimes you—" "Mom, the card is gone." "From my wallet. I need you to ask Derek where he is right now." She paused one beat too long. "He's picking you up, actually. He should be there any minute. He wanted to be there for you." I set the phone face down on the blanket and closed my eyes. He arrived 40 minutes later, just as a nurse was helping me into a wheelchair for discharge. He came through the double doors wearing a brand new pair of limited edition Jordans I had never seen before and carrying a sleek matte black shopping bag from Novatech Electronics. He was grinning the grin of a man who has just had an extremely good day. "Hey, sis," he said. "You look rough." I looked at his feet. He looked at my face. The grin wavered. In the parking lot, while he loaded my bag into the back of his car, I asked him. I kept my voice completely level, the way I do when I'm reviewing a billing discrepancy at work, not angry, just precise. "Where did the card come from, Derek?" He denied it first. His crypto account had finally paid out, he said. He'd been sitting on a position for months. I should be happy for him. He'd worked hard for this. Then I showed him the timestamps on my phone. 11:14 a.m. Novatech. 11:52 a.m. Seoul District. The surgery had begun at 10:30. I had been unconscious on a table when someone slid that card out of its hidden pocket. His face shifted through several configurations before landing on something defensive and sullen. "I was going to pay it back," he said. "It's basically family money anyway. Grandpa left it for us." And there it was. The sentence that told me everything I needed to know about what he understood and what he didn't about what he had just done. I said nothing. I got in the car and looked out the window the entire drive home. My grandfather Harold was a plumber. Not metaphorically, not in the bootstraps American dream sense. People use loosely, literally a plumber, licensed at 19, working 60-hour weeks through 2 recessions, building a small empire of service contracts and municipal accounts, and eventually, at 64, selling his company for more money than anyone in our family had ever seen in one place. He wore the same Timex he'd bought in 1987 until the day he died. He fixed his own gutters. He was the most deliberate, careful man I have ever known. He was also one of the few people in my life who ever looked at Derek and my mother without the rose-tinted filter they preferred. Where my mother saw Derek's entitlement as ambition, my grandfather saw a 22-year-old who had never held a job for more than 3 months, who borrowed money with the cheerful confidence of someone who has never once had to pay it back. He never said this to me directly. He didn't have to. You learn to read the silences of careful people. When he got sick, he called me to his house on a Tuesday afternoon. Just me. He had already spoken with his estate attorney, a woman named Miss Clary, sharp and compact, and the sort of person who does not use 2 words when one will do. The trust documents were laid out on his kitchen table like a legal briefing. He was leaving the bulk of his estate to a vocational scholarship fund he'd established at the community center, where he'd learned to read electrical diagrams as a teenager. He was leaving a vehicle to my cousin, and he was establishing a trust of $175,000 for Derek, managed by me, accessible by Derek at 30 for any verified use, or sooner, for documented educational or housing expenses with my approval as trustee. "Grandpa," I said, "that's a lot of responsibility." "It's exactly the right amount," he said. He had oxygen tubes by then, but his eyes were clear and direct. "Your mother will push. He'll charm. You know the documents are the only thing they respect, and only when they can't get around them." He tapped a tab section near the back. "Read that one carefully." I read it. Section 5, subsection B. Any unauthorized withdrawal by the beneficiary, defined as any transaction made without the trustee's express written approval and not meeting the enumerated qualifying uses, shall immediately and permanently void the beneficiary's entire claim to the trust principal. "Grandpa, this is insurance," he said, "against wishful thinking." He died 11 days later. Miss Clary read the trust at the estate meeting. My mother's face went through the same sequence every time. Disbelief, recalculation, manufactured grievance. Derek had been on his phone during most of it, only looking up when Miss Clary read the forfeiture clause aloud. He and my mother had both signed an acknowledgement form, confirming they understood the terms. Derek signed it the way you sign a receipt at a restaurant, quickly, without reading. My mother signed it the way she agrees to things she plans to revisit later, with a pleasant smile and absolutely no intention of honoring it. For 2 years, they had been revisiting it. The request started small. Derek needed a laptop for an online course he was going to take. "The trust only covers enrolled coursework," I told him. "Send me the enrollment confirmation." He never did. 6 months later, he needed $5,000 for a business idea, a mobile car detailing service. I had sent him a written denial by email, attached the relevant clause, and filed the response in the folder I had started keeping the day the estate closed. 3 months after that, my mother had called asking for a small loan from the trust to cover Derek's security deposit on an apartment just until he got his first paycheck from a job he had not yet gotten. The requests always had the same architecture: urgent, emotionally loaded, framed as temporary. And they were always followed, when denied, by a version of the same accusation, that I was selfish, that I was jealous, that our grandfather would have wanted Derek to have access to his own money, that I was using the trust as a power move. What they never considered was that I was keeping records. Every email, every text, a clear, dated log of every request and every denial, not because I expected to need it. I am a billing coordinator at a large hospital system. Documentation is not a strategy for me, it is a reflex. You do not survive a decade of medical billing disputes without developing a deep, almost spiritual respect for the paper trail. The night I got home from the hospital, moving slowly, pain medication blunting the edges of everything, I sat down at my desk and I opened that folder. I printed the denial email from 8 months ago. I printed the text thread from 6 months back, when I had found my wallet disturbed on the counter. After Derek had been over for dinner, I had texted him directly. "Hey, I just want to make sure, did you go through my wallet?" One of the cards looked moved. He had said no. I had kept the exchange. Then I called Miss Clary. She answered on the second ring. "Miss Clary," I said, "it's Claire. There's been an unauthorized withdrawal from the Harold G. Legacy Trust, Derek. $8,500. Luxury goods. I have the transaction records." There was a short pause. When she spoke, her voice had dropped into a register I recognized from deposition. Prep, measured, precise, already working. How long ago? Today. While I was under anesthesia. Another pause. That was deliberate timing. Yes, I'll need the bank statements and the transaction detail. I'll file the petition with the probate court this week. She paused one more time. "Claire, you know what this activates." "I know. They won't take it well. They never do," I said. "But I have my documentation ready." I spent the next 2 days resting and building my case. My abdomen ached. I worked anyway, sitting at my kitchen table in the quiet. The transaction records from the bank came through in a PDF. I printed them, highlighted each purchase, and looked up each vendor. The Novatech receipt was a 6.5-inch OLED television and a gaming console. Soul District was 2 pairs of sneakers. Apex Gear Co. was wireless headphones and a mechanical keyboard. There were 3 more charges. A dinner at a steakhouse I recognized as the kind of place he always talked about going, a clothing store, and this one almost made me laugh. A 2-night stay at a downtown hotel booked for next weekend. He had planned ahead. He had not, in any sense of the word, borrowed the money. He had spent it with the casual confidence of someone who believed they would face no consequences. That confidence had a name, and her name was my mother. I thought about her voice on the phone. "He stopped by to check on your car." She had known. She may not have told him exactly which card to take, but she had given him the opportunity and the implicit permission, and that was enough. She had spent 2 years telling him that I was being difficult, that the money was really his, that I would eventually give in because I always gave in. She had been wrong about that last part. She had been wrong about it for a long time. Miss Clary's meeting invitation arrived in my inbox Thursday morning. Friday, 10 a.m. Conference room. I ironed my clothes the night before. A gray blazer, dark pants, a white blouse. I pulled my hair back tightly. I assembled a manila folder, the trust document with 3 tabbed pages, the transaction printouts, the email denial from 8 months ago, and the text exchange from 6 months back. Clean, organized, factual. I labeled the folder tab in my neatest handwriting. Trust Violations Section 5B. When I walked into the conference room, they were already there. My mother had worn her best blazer, the burgundy one she saves for situations she intends to win. She was already talking when I came through the door, leaning toward Miss Clary with the focused energy she uses when she's pitching something. Derek sat beside her with his arms crossed, wearing a new hoodie I did not recognize, and the Jordans from the hospital parking lot. He looked up when I entered with a complicated expression, part defiance, part something else that I had not seen on him before. Something that looked, for the first time, like the beginning of fear. I sat down across from them. I placed my folder on the table. Miss Clary began without preamble. She outlined the nature of the meeting, the documented unauthorized withdrawals, the date, the amounts, the vendors. My mother interrupted twice. "Miss," Clary stopped her twice, with the same quiet, absolute authority, and continued. "Derek," she said, looking at him directly, "did you take the trust's debit card from your sister's wallet and make these purchases?" He shifted in his seat. "I was going to pay it back. It's my money." "It is not your money," I said. My voice was steady. I opened the folder to the first tab. "Our grandfather established this trust. I am the trustee. You are the beneficiary. Your grandfather's money exists in that trust and does not become yours until you are 30, or until you satisfy the qualifying conditions. You have met neither. That card was not yours to use. She's always been like this." My mother's voice rose sharply, controlling, withholding. "Your grandfather trusted you with this because he knew you'd use it to keep it from Derek. She's jealous. She's always been. Renee." Miss Clary's voice was flat and final. "I will ask you one more time to let me finish." The room went quiet. Miss Clary picked up a single sheet of paper. "I'd like to direct your attention to the acknowledgement form you both signed at the estate meeting. This is your signature, Renee. This is yours, Derek. By signing, you confirmed that you had read and understood the terms of the Harold G. Legacy Trust, including Section 5, subsection B." She paused. "I'm going to read that section now." She read it, all of it. The dense, careful language that my grandfather had sat with for 2 hours in this same office, making sure every word was right, any unauthorized withdrawal by the beneficiary. Immediately and permanently void. Entire claim to the trust principal. Derek's arms dropped from his chest. My mother's face had gone the particular white that means the blood has drained toward the center of the body. "Wait," Derek said. His voice had changed. The sullenness was gone. What was left sounded younger and much less certain. "What does void mean?" "Like void the 9,000. No?" I said. I closed my folder and looked at him directly. "Void the trust. All of it. The $175,000. Every dollar." He stared at me. For several seconds, he did not speak. Then, "That's not," he turned to my mother. "That's not real. Tell her that's not real." My mother had not moved. She was still staring at the acknowledgement form Miss Clary had placed in front of her. Her own signature in blue ink, neat and confident and irrevocable. "It is entirely real," Miss Clary said. The moment the first unauthorized transaction was approved, which occurred at 11:14 a.m., 2 days ago, the forfeiture was triggered. "I filed the petition with the probate court yesterday. It has been approved. The process of liquidating the trust principal and transferring it to the Harold G. Vocational Scholarship Fund, per your grandfather's contingency instructions, is already underway." "The scholarship fund," Derek said blankly. "The one he established at the Westbrook Community Center," I said. "The one he named for himself, the one I volunteer with twice a year." "You," my mother found her voice. It came out cracked, stripped of the breezy warmth and the real estate polish. Just raw. "You did this. You set him up. You kept that card somewhere he could find it on purpose." I let that settle in the air for a moment before I answered. "I kept the card in a hidden pocket behind a false flap in my wallet," I said. "Behind my personal cards, behind a zipper, inside a section designed not to be found. Derek found it because he was looking for it. He was looking for it because you told him it was there, or because he has gone through my wallet before, which I have documentation of looking for exactly that card." I slid the printed text exchange across the table. 6 months ago, I confronted him about it directly. He denied it. I kept the record. My mother looked at the printout. She picked it up, put it down. "You can challenge the forfeiture," Miss Clary said, "but I would advise you to consider carefully. The evidence is unambiguous, the documentation is extensive, and you both signed the acknowledgement." She looked over her reading glasses. "Your grandfather was very precise. He anticipated this." I stood and picked up my folder. "Miss Clary, I think everything has been covered. Thank you." "Of course, Claire. Exemplary documentation, as always." I walked to the door. "Claire." My mother's voice followed me. It had shifted again, not angry now, just hollow, like a sound coming from a room that has been emptied out. "You can't let this happen. He's your brother." I stopped. I turned. Derek was staring at the table. His jaw was tight. Whatever anger he had directed at me since I confronted him in the parking lot had gone somewhere else, pooling in a different direction. He made his choice, I said, and you helped him make it. I walked out into the hallway, where the carpet was a muted institutional blue, and the air conditioning hummed steadily, and the world continued exactly as before. I thought the meeting would be the end of it. I was wrong about that the same way I am always wrong when I underestimate how long my mother can sustain a siege. The texts started before I got to my car. They came in waves, each one a new approach to the same collapsed argument. First bargaining Derek would sell everything. They could return the merchandise, the TV was still in the box, maybe the court would see it differently. Then guilt everything she had given up for me, everything she had sacrificed. How could I repay that by doing this to my own family? She didn't know who I was anymore. Then threat she knew a lawyer. She would sue. She would tell everyone what I'd done. I would lose my job. I would regret this. I read each one and did not reply. Derek's messages were different in tone, less polished, more fractured. He was sorry. He had messed up badly. He knew that. He was going to get his life together for real this time. I was the only one who could fix this. Wasn't I always the one who fixed things? Didn't that mean something? It did mean something. It had meant something for 30 years. The way a floor means something when you're always standing on it and never thinking about what it costs the floor. I turned my phone to silent and went back to work. The escalation came on Thursday, 9 days after the meeting. I was at my desk in the billing department, working through a stack of insurance denials, a task that requires patience and a forensic attention to detail, both of which I have in surplus, when my colleague knocked on my cubicle frame with the careful expression people use when delivering unwelcome news. "There's someone out front asking for you," she said. "Your mom, I think. She's pretty upset." I closed my eyes briefly. My mother was in the waiting area of the billing department, which is not a dramatic setting, fluorescent lights, a row of plastic chairs, a water dispenser. She had somehow managed to make it feel like the lobby of a courtroom. She was standing at the reception desk, still wearing the burgundy blazer, which was now rumpled, the collar askew, and she was explaining to the receptionist with escalating urgency that her daughter worked here and she needed to speak with her immediately. It was a family emergency. When she saw me come through the door, she moved toward me so quickly, the receptionist stepped back. "Mom," I said quietly, aware of the 3 patients seated in the chairs and the 2 colleagues who had found reasons to be near the doorway. "This is my workplace. You cannot be here. I don't care." Her voice was raw with something that sounded less like anger and more like desperation, which somehow made it worse. "I have nowhere else to go. Derek won't return my calls. He left. He packed a bag and left. Claire, your brother is gone and this is your fault." "It isn't," I said. "He's not eating. He's not. I don't know where he's sleeping. Mom." I stepped closer and kept my voice low. "Look at me. The money is gone. The petition has been approved. The trust is in the process of transfer. There is no version of this, where a conversation in my waiting room changes any of those facts. You could have lied." Her voice dropped to something fierce and quiet. "You could have told Miss Clary it was a mistake. You could have protected him. Protected him from what? From the consequences of stealing from me? I've been protecting him from consequences his entire life, Mom. Every time you asked me to cover for him, every time you needed me to absorb something so he wouldn't have to. What did it do for him? He's 22, and he has no skills and no savings and no job, and the one safety net our grandfather built for him is gone, because no one, including you, ever let him learn that actions have outcomes." She opened her mouth. "You sent him into my apartment," I said. "You knew I was in surgery. You knew he'd been looking for that card. You thought it was my personal savings account, and you thought I'd be upset, and then you'd talk me down the way you always do. You didn't think about the document you signed 2 years ago. You thought my grandfather was bluffing." For the second time in 2 weeks, I watched the calculation leave her face. "He never bluffed," I said. "Not once in his life." I turned to the receptionist. "Can you please call building security? I need this visitor escorted out." My mother said nothing. She did not perform another scene. She just stood there while 2 security officers arrived and walked her quietly to the elevator, and I watched her go the way you watch something you have been bracing for, finally arrive with a kind of exhausted relief. They came to my apartment together on a Sunday. I heard them before they knocked, their voices carrying through the door in the low, terse register of people who have been arguing all the way up the stairs and have not finished. Then a knock, sharp and uneven, not my mother's confident rap, not Derek's lazy thump, but something between the two, unsteady, panic, knocking. I looked through the peephole. They stood side by side in the hallway, and for a moment they looked like they had been miniaturized by something. My mother's blazer was gone. She was wearing a plain fleece and no makeup, and she looked, for the first time I could remember, like a person who was tired. Derek stood next to her with a duffel bag strap across one shoulder, his posture the collapsed kind that follows a long sleeplessness. I opened the door. I did not invite them in. I leaned against the frame and waited. "The funds transferred," my mother said. Her voice had none of its previous registers, not breezy, not sharp, not manipulative, just flat. "We got the notification from the court." "I know," I said. "It was transferred Friday." Derek's jaw worked. He was looking at me the way you look at someone you thought you understood and are suddenly not sure about. "You really just let it happen," he said. $175,000. You just let it go. There was nothing to let. It's irrevocable, Derek. The moment you entered the PIN, it was already done. I filed the paperwork. That was all I did. "You could have stopped it," my mother said, with a final flicker of the old accusation. "You could have." "I had a fiduciary duty," I said. "To the trust, not to you. Grandpa made that very clear when he set it up. He knew you'd ask me to choose, and he made sure I didn't have to, because the law chose for me." "This is unbelievable." Derek set his bag down heavily against the wall. "This is actually insane. All of this over a card I found in your wallet." "You didn't find it," I said. "You looked for it. You had looked before, and someone told you what you were looking for." The silence that followed had a particular quality to it, the kind that forms when a true thing lands in a space that hasn't been ready to hold it. Derek turned to our mother slowly. The motion reminded me of a compass needle swinging to find north. "You told me which card," he said. "You said she was sitting on the money. You said it was basically mine. You said she'd never know in time. Baby." You told me it was her savings account." His voice rose. Not the entitled explosion I had witnessed in the past, this was something raw. "You said she'd be upset, and then she'd get over it. You said it every time, and I always believed you, and this time you were wrong, and I'm the one who—" He stopped. His voice broke on the last word, and he pressed his mouth into a line. "I lost everything. I don't have anything, and it's because you told me it was fine. I was trying to help you," she said, reaching toward him. He stepped back. "You never help me. You tell me I'm special, and you tell me the rules don't apply, and then when I believe you, I'm the one holding the consequences. You did this. You've been doing this my whole life." She stood in my hallway with her hand still extended and nowhere to land, and I watched her face do the thing it does when a performance runs out of audience. The structure of it collapsed inward. I looked at Derek. "The money went to the scholarship fund," I said. "Grandpa named it for himself. It funds trade apprenticeships at the community center. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, kids who need a real skill and a real start." I paused. "That's what he wanted to do with it, if this happened. He built that clause the same year he set up the fund. He planned for this." Derek stared at me. Something moved across his face that I couldn't entirely name. Not grief exactly, not anger, but something adjacent to both. The look of a person doing math that doesn't add up the way they always assumed it would. "He knew," he said, not quite a question. "He knew you," I said. "He knew Mom. And he knew me, and he knew what I would need to finally stop. So he gave me a legal obligation instead of a choice. Because he knew I would honor the obligation even when I would have given in to the choice." I looked at my mother one more time. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. I closed the door. I stood in my front hallway for a moment, listening to the muffled sound of their voices on the other side. Derek's rising and jagged, my mother's low and fractured, and then I walked back to my kitchen table, sat down with a cup of tea that had gone lukewarm, and felt the specific quiet of a house that belongs entirely to you. Derek left. That part I learned from my cousin 2 weeks later. He had packed properly this time and driven to our aunt's place outside Columbus, my father's sister, a woman with no patience for excuses, and a concrete block shed behind her house where she made people earn their keep. The last I heard, he was doing manual labor on a landscaping crew, waking before 6, coming home with dirt under his fingernails, and real exhaustion instead of the performed kind. I did not know what he was thinking, or whether any of it was sticking. I hoped it was. I found, to my own surprise, that I genuinely hoped it was. My mother's collapse was quieter and slower, the kind that happens in private. Her real estate pipeline dried up the cheerful certainty that makes a good realtor requires a foundation of actual certainty, and hers had cracked through. Clients sensed it. Listings went to other agents. She sent me one email, long and unstructured, cycling through excuses and half-apologies and self-pity in roughly equal measure. I read it once, saved it to my family folder, and did not reply. Miss Clary sent me a formal notification when the trust funds completed their transfer to the Harold G. Vocational Scholarship Fund. I printed it and framed it. Not prominently, it sits on the windowsill behind my desk, where I see it every morning when I open the blinds. About 6 weeks later, I received an invitation to a small ceremony at the Westbrook Community Center. I went without knowing exactly what to expect. There was cake, folding chairs, a small crowd of volunteers, and program recipients, and a city councilwoman who said nice things about community investment. At the end, they unveiled a sign on the newly repainted workshop wall. It read, "This facility was expanded through the Harold G. Vocational Scholarship Fund, in memory of a man who believed in the dignity of honest work." Below it, a small plaque listed the first cohort of scholarship recipients, 12 names, 12 young people who would complete trade apprenticeships fully funded. The program director found me afterward and shook my hand. "We heard how this came about," she said simply. "What you held to. It couldn't have been easy." "No," I said. "It wasn't." She nodded like she understood the specific weight of that. I went to dinner with Miss Clary the following week, at her insistence. She ordered good wine, and we talked about the estate and the scholarship and the strange, indirect way that careful people manage to reach forward across time. Over dessert, she set her fork down and looked at me the way she had looked at me in her office, the day my grandfather died, clear-eyed and direct, respecting me enough not to soften the thing she was about to say. "Your grandfather knew this was likely," she said. "He didn't set up that forfeiture clause because he thought Derek was irredeemable. He set it up because he knew that without a hard stop, you never would have been." I turned my wine glass slowly. "He wasn't protecting the money, Claire. He could have donated the full amount outright. He left it in a trust, specifically because he knew what would happen, and he wanted it to happen on terms that would finally give you permission to stop." I didn't say anything for a moment. He used to say, I finally told her, that the documents are the final word, that they don't care about feelings or excuses, they just are. Miss Clary smiled, small and dry. "Sounds like something he'd say. He meant it as practical advice," I said. "I think he also meant it as a gift." She raised her glass slightly. I drove home through quiet streets, the city settling into evening, the weight I had been carrying for so long that I had stopped feeling it as weight, and started feeling it as just the normal density of being me. That weight was gone. My apartment was exactly how I'd left it. My cat was asleep on the back of the sofa. My files were in their folders. My grandfather's plaque was on my windowsill. I made tea and sat at my kitchen table in the silence that was mine, entirely mine, and I thought about a man who had worn a Timex watch for 40 years and known, from the very beginning, exactly what he was building and who it was really for.